Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, September 16th to order. Today we have one item on our consent calendar, which is a time extension, and then three regular items. And I haven't received any requests for continuances or withdrawals or postponements, so we'll hear them in the order that they appear on the agenda. Under announcements and appeals, I have no announcements, and we've had no recent appeals. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? No, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which is a consent item. Typically for consent items, I waive the staff report, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Suzanne?
I don't think there's anything I need to at this time.
Okay, is the applicant here for the time extension? Do they have anything do you want to have anything you want to add to the? Okay, there is one item I'd just like to clarify that under the project description, it does talk about it's a one-year time extension of the expiration of a tentative map that was approved by the Planning Commission back in September of 2009. And under the findings, under the recommendations, it recommends that the staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the 3-year time extension to September 3rd, 2016. And so the 3-year time extension is actually a typo. It is requested a 1-year time extension. So I just wanted to make that clear for anyone who may be watching online or at home or is in the audience. So I agree with staff's recommendation that this project continues to be in conformance with the city's general plan and also with our zoning ordinance. We haven't made any significant changes that would affect this proposed or the subdivision's consistency with that. So I grant the request and approve the requested 1-year time extension. So now the map will expire September 3rd of 2016. Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the first item. Can you get Danny? Which is 924 Garden Street, number C. The applicant would like to come up. I do have one request, public speaker slip. I don't know if anybody else is here who wishes to provide public comment on this item. If so, there's green public speaker slips over on the shelf over there. If you would fill it out and give it to Kathy, and so we can have your name. We'll just give Danny a second to organize.
Sorry.
Just to let you know, you received another comment delivered at the hearing.
Okay.
Did you receive this one?
Yes. And I have a copy for the applicant somewhere.
Okay. So anytime you're ready, Danny.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Reardon. My name is Danny Cotto. I'm the senior planner for the zoning section, and I'll be presenting this case 924C Garden Street. The project is basically it's the legalization of some as-built improvements and the proposal for one uncovered parking space. These as-built additions were discovered in a ZIR, Zoning Information Report, that was prepared in 2014, and the owners have been working to abate these violations. So there were a series of as-built additions and conversions, which I'll describe, and so the reason we're here today is to ask for 3 modifications. One is for the number of parking spaces to be reduced and also to go from covered to uncovered. The second is to provide the uncovered parking space in a front setback. And the third is for some improvements to the converted portion of the building in the interior setback. I'd like to orient you to the site. First, let me say that this project has a address on Garden Street, but it's actually on El Caserio, which is a little historic street. If you look on the vicinity map here, it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but Garden Street runs, this is Garden Street, and here's Carrillo. Cannon Perdido is kind of over here off the map. El Caserio is a little street that starts on Garden Street, heads east, and then mid-block turns south, and then connects up with Cannon Perdido on the south. It is a historic neighborhood. 8 of the houses have been designated historic landmarks, including this one. This house is located where this little dark gray bubble is. It's on the west side of the north-south section of El Caserio, pretty near the corner. So now if we go to the site plan, El Caserio is, let's move this up a little bit. Sorry, Mark. El Caserio runs here on the right-hand side. Cannon Perdido is down here, it runs up, and then it makes the turn a little bit above and goes out to Garden Street over on this side. In purple, we have the project boundaries. The green is the setback lines. The orange is the existing as-built footprint, and the red shows the as-built improvements. So there was a garage that was converted, a storage room that was converted, a new bedroom that was added, and a porch that was enclosed. In blue, it shows the proposed uncovered parking space off of El Caserio.
And this is new screening to screen it from El Caserio?
Yeah, there's some plantings here.
Okay.
If we go to the floor plan, again, in orange, we have what was the previously existing footprint. This study was the porch that was enclosed. This is the as-built bedroom, and this was the garage was kind of this area with a storage room behind. If you notice, there's the minimum width of this area here, the former garage, is only 7.5 feet. It is a 2-story building, so there's a second story. You can see this outline kind of goes right over this. So this thing is kind of in this area here. So I said there are 3 modifications: a parking modification, a setback modification, and 2 setback modifications. I need to talk about the parking modifications, or at least the parking modification and the front setback modification together. They only work together. The parking requirement for a single-family house is 2 covered parking spaces. Now, this house used to have 1 covered parking space. It was converted to the family room. The applicants are proposing to keep that conversion and to replace that 1 parking space with this uncovered parking space in the front setback. Now, the findings for a parking modification to reduce the number there are 2 sections to it. One is that the proposal cannot increase the parking demand in the immediate area, and the second is that the request must be consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance. Now, transportation staff has reviewed this project, and they have determined that the parking demand is not being increased with the proposal. Their view is that the parking demand for a single-family residence is 2 spaces, no matter what its size. So by increasing its size, it's still, it was 2, it is 2, so there's no increase. The second part of the finding has to do with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. We believe, as far as parking goes, the purpose and intent is to provide an adequate number of parking spaces for a particular type of use. In this, and normally, I guess, the zoning ordinance requires 2, so that would be considered adequate. However, in this area of town, it is in the central business district. It is close to services and amenities and public transportation and various forms of alternative methods of transportation. So in this case, we believe that the intent is met by only one parking space instead of 2. There are other reasons to support the mod, including that the garage, as it existed, was only 7.5 feet wide. So it's really not adequate to even park a space in a modern car in there. I mean, when it was built in the 30s, Model A's were probably a little bit smaller than our current cars, so it might have been adequate back then. But we don't believe it to be an adequate space right now. Furthermore, the project is a landmark, and the additions, as they have been as built, do meet the Secretary of Interior standards for additions, and that would be another reason. So, to conclude on that portion, staff supports the reduction of parking space from 2 covered to 1 uncovered. Now, the associated portion of that is the parking in the setback. The proposal is to allow the replacement uncovered parking space to be in the front setback in this location here. It's a 10-foot front setback, and the entire parking space would be in that area. Transportation staff has reviewed it for maneuverability and found that it is supportable in this location as long as there's at least a 14-foot wide opening here, and a little over 16 feet is proposed. The 14 feet will allow for adequate maneuvering space to back out onto El Caserio, which is a very low volume street. So as far as maneuvering, transportation staff supports that. Zoning staff supports it because it is well, it's consistent with the pattern of development in the neighborhood, where there are other approved uncovered parking spaces in the front setback. We believe that it is not anticipated to adversely affect any adjacent neighbors. Now, like I said, these two go together. You can't, because there were proposed parking spaces proposed in the setback. If you were considering approving the reduction from 2 spaces to 1, you'd also have to approve the uncovered parking space here. And if you were inclined to not approve either one of those, we would have some additional conditions that we would recommend. We could talk about that if it comes up. The third modification is for some alterations and to the conversion of the garage and storage area to livable space, the addition of the bedroom in the setback, and some windows and doors on this side. Now, I didn't mention this on the staff report. There is quite a bit of vegetative screening on this side, which provides an adequate buffer, in our opinion, between this house and the neighboring property. And the door that is proposed only leads to, it's an exterior access, in fact, the only access to a four-stair unit. So no lighting would be required on that door, and we think it's pretty basically supportable. And the windows, again, these are ground floor windows, and there is adequate landscaping to screen it. Staff recommends approval of this modification as well. We support the modification because there is adequate screening. We don't believe it will be a detriment to the neighboring property to the south. Again, all the improvements that were done meet the Secretary of Interior standards for additions to a historic structure. There is a detached accessory space in the back, which is proposed to be moved outside of the setback. It currently exists in the setback, so we've added a condition to that effect. We did environmental review. There was a Phase 1 archaeological study done. It found that there was very limited, well, all this work is already done. The only new work that would be done is for the uncovered parking space. It found very limited possibility of any kind of artifacts being found. So they recommended monitoring, and that is also a condition.
Okay.
So to conclude my presentation, staff supports all three modifications and recommends approval of the project.
Okay, great. I just have one question or verification. So this is zone C2, right?
Correct.
And what's the setback for uncovered parking, interior setback?
The interior setback for uncovered parking, well, because it's zone C2, but it is 100% residential, so
Right.
we treat it as an R3, R4, and it's a it's normally a 6-foot setback. Now,
Could it qualify for the 3-foot
it
setback
could
here?
qualify, I believe it could qualify for the 3-foot setback because it's less than 55 feet wide. It's only 45 feet wide. It is, the garage doesn't face, or sorry, the parking space doesn't face the street.
Okay. I think that was all the questions for you right now. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Mark Morando, agent for the owner.
Jill Sattler, owner.
Okay.
Danny did a great job describing the project. Basically, the house was built in 1930 as a 716 square foot dwelling. It had, you walk in the entry with the dining room, the living room, the kitchen, and you went upstairs, these steep stairs, to the bedroom and the only bathroom in the house. Originally, it was designed by Roderick White, and J.P. Sullivan built it. They showed a garage here, which was a gravel floor, and currently there's an old Douglas fir floor in there, nominal framing with Douglas fir flooring, and then the storeroom is actually concrete, and so was the patio. So they were slabs on grade, and this was gravel. In the future, this is probably all poured at one time. So now this is a raised floor, and there was no door. But we have a picture in 1940 showing that there's a window here. And the windows on this house are pretty unique in that the front windows are bifold casements that they each open outward. And then they have windows that are stained glass with patterned mullions on the inside that open inward. And there's 2 of those windows here, which are very unique. And there's the man door, and then there's the picture window in the front. And the records show, from the assessor's records show, that originally it states that there was a garage, but then in 1951, when the kill file, when they copied it over, they said that there was no garage. They kind of wrote it in right here. And right here shows that at some time there was a garage when they reviewed it. But we don't know. So in 1940, the windows show up, but we don't have any evidence of the aerial photography. There's so much vegetation around surrounding the house that you can't see it from anywhere. This is the picture
And this is
that shows the window in the garage. And the house, the rear addition shows up in 1986 per the assessor's record. So at sometime pre-50, the garage and the storeroom were converted to habitable space. And sometime between 86 and 1950 and 1986, the bedroom shows up. And they also found the enclosure of the porch. So this is a roofed terrace porch, and it has clear story windows above. And this was enclosed by this wall right here with a door and a window. It's a pretty complicated case in the sense that this, like Danny said, this garage is about 8 feet here, and then the fireplace pops out at 7.5. It has a low plate height of about 6 feet, and even on the assessor records it says reduced height for this whole area. So we don't know if we could ever get a car in there, and when we went to the Historic Landmarks Commission, they had asked us to provide replacement parking in the front, but to push it forward from the tower. So we took it to the interior setback line right here, so we weren't encroaching into the interior on the front. And the actual front facade of this has kind of gained some historic value in and of itself from being there for so long. And, you know, with the matching terracotta tiles, the stucco, the window treatments, everything mimics it all the way along. The rear addition is in line with the side, and it's actually 3 feet 7 inches from the front and 3 feet 6 inches from the back to the property line. But on the original permit, it showed that it was 5 feet from each side. So there's 3.6 here, but there's 7 feet over here. So when they place it on the lot, they got it a little bit wrong. So that's why this, otherwise this was intended to be at the 5-foot setback line. Jill, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, just other than these were in Santa Barbara Magazine, and the original file had come from the Gled Hill Library. And so this shows the ocean-facing side of my house, and this as well. This, at least in the magazine, it said it was 1940. And you can see where there, I can't tell upside down, but where there were, you can see one of those side windows. And
Oh, is that this right here?
Mark, maybe you can.
Right, this is the tower element beyond, and this is the fireplace.
So that's
So this is the shed roof
Yeah.
as it comes off the garage, and this is a window that's in the garage.
Okay.
One of the two small windows that are on that side. I got a better picture of it somewhere.
Is it, well, I don't think it shows up here. We have all these newspaper articles from the Gled Hill.
This is the two windows that are in the garage right here, that are the double casements, and then this is the FAU door right here that's wood, kind of lower to the ground, and that's the one in the bedroom towards the back. You can see that the details all match the existing. One thing to note for the record is that when all these homes were landmarked in 1990, that all this work that you see on the outside, the inside, everything is exactly like it was landmarked.
Was there a study that was done that reviewed each of the homes at that time, or was it just the street in general?
It was, each of the homes was reviewed. It had all their permit files and records and history and everything, but there's no plans of what they landmarked. There's no drawings, either architectural or there's no surveys. There's no information on what was actually landmarked.
Okay.
So, and the original, when her mom bought it in 1976, they did a ZIR, and the ZIR had a statement that basically said, since all the homes in this area, the records are hard to discern, since this one's labeled 924 and so are a bunch of the other ones, it was just assumed that each of the homes met the zoning ordinance at the time that it was built. So
It didn't help any. It didn't,
Yeah,
it
it
didn't
didn't.
shed any light on any of the amendments. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
I guess if you look at the pattern of development in the neighborhood and you look at the parking, there was 2 uncovered parking spaces on the Adobe on the corner when it was originally permitted. Let's see if we can go all the way. It's back here. Right here, there used to be a garage and a carport, and they demoed it and put a second story on this building right at the end of the lane, and then they put 2 uncovered spaces, both in the front and the interior setback. And, you see that these people have a 1-car garage and a 1-car garage, but everybody tends to park along the alley. And there's a vacant lot next door with all the vegetation that screens Jill's house. And there's 4 spaces in front of it, and then there's 3 in front of this one, and that's just basically the pattern of development in the neighborhood. And we've provided a bunch of photos to
Yeah. Okay.
kind of shed light on that matter.
I do have one more question, Danny. Is this considered a public street, or is it?
Private.
It's a private street.
It's a private street. Okay. Our setbacks still apply, but it's a private street. Okay. All right. Great. Is that it? That's
Yeah.
okay. So I'll open the public hearing. I have a speaker slip from Joseph Motisha.
Motisha.
Sorry, Motisha. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Motisha. I'm a property owner in the area. I own 318 East Carrillo, which the back of my property backs up onto this historical housing area. And I would like to say that I am basically in support of the project. As Danny has stated, they're just legalizing something that's been used for years, and there's no reason to change it. The biggest reason I'm here is probably for two parts. At one time, probably 20 years ago, and forgive me for interrupt me if I say something I shouldn't say. I tried to architecturally put a project through in the middle of the block, and I had a historical housing area who totally objected to the project. And in the near future, I am going to put a project through on my property on Carrillo, and it will probably, I'm allowed to go 3 stories with it. It will block views of this. They claim there are views. There's so many trees there and so much vegetation that basically they don't see outside of their historical housing area. And I want to kind of put on record that I am developing something that's going to be taller than what is there. And
Yeah,
I'm
you're right. That
surprised.
probably should be something for the next project when you come.
Yeah,
forward.
I'm surprised there's not more people here. There will be at the historical landmarks when they finally get the approval of it, to object to making this project a little bit more tighter than what it is. In short, putting parking in the setback when they could, and I'm not really pushing that because I wouldn't want anybody to push it on me. Spending the money to do something that would be totally legal and correct for the property. It is a historical landmark, and the less we do to the project is probably better. But I would like to do something in the near future, and it's going to be within the next year of doing something major, and it may be before, and I'm understanding that, Jill, you have intentions of selling the property. I hope you are still there and you understand that I am in agreement with this project, and you will be in agreement with my project.
Okay, you can focus on this project. It's fine.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 924 Garden Street?
I did put a note in yesterday. Yeah, there's a couple of notes.
Right, yeah, but did you want to speak at the hearing or no? Okay, great. So I did receive 2 public comment letters. One was from Sheila Enslow, and expressing concerns with parking. It says the issue of where and how to park a car in front of that property has to be addressed before any additions are considered. As it is now, it detracts from the charm of the house as well as the neighborhood. Please consider this in making your final decision. I would like to reiterate the fact that what is there now is what is going to be there now. There's not any new construction. It's legalizing things that have occurred in the past. So in terms of how the building itself looks, it won't look any different after this instance. And then I did receive a new letter this morning, Wendy Foster, who is also a neighbor. Also expressing concerns about cars and parking. It's the number 1 priority for the neighborhood. And seeing if there's some way we can make it in conformity with the feeling laws of the areas. So have we received any other letters or emails? No? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site and visited the neighborhood, the street, and got a feel of what the parking situation is and what's occurring now. And in regards to the interior setback request, I guess, which one should I tackle first?
I think you should probably tackle the parking in the front setback.
Yeah, okay,
first.
so there's
much
parking
depends on that.
modification to provide less than the required 2 covered parking spaces, and then to allow the one that is proposed to be uncovered instead of covered. There's the front setback modification to allow the one uncovered parking space to be located in the front setback, and then the interior. So I'll do the parking modification first because that's the thing driving it. When I went out to the site, you were really nice to let me inside the house, and I looked at the subject area and what was called previously the garage. And It is really small. It's 7.5 feet where the chimney is, and then it's 8 feet. And when you're in there, even today, if it was a garage and you were asking today to convert it, it's not functional as a garage. And so in reality, it wouldn't be used as a garage now anyways. Looking at that, in terms of breaking down the finding where it says there's 2 thresholds. One, as Danny said, is it consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance? And 2, does it increase the demand for parking and loading space in the immediate area? It is an existing situation, and even if it was targeted as a garage, it wouldn't be used as a garage. However, the city would see that as a garage, but I think it really wouldn't increase the demand for parking, although in technicality you're increasing the bedrooms, which it could be seen as that, but it's an existing situation that's occurred since at least the 50s. So it's not something that has been converted in the recent past. So that, in terms of that part, I feel comfortable with. In terms of the consistency with the zoning ordinance, like Danny said, you are required 2 parking spaces. That's one part of the zoning ordinance. Another part of the municipal code is the protection of historic resources, and this is, like you said, a designated historic resource, and that is also a consideration you need to take into account when you're seeing the appropriateness of a particular improvement. And so I think you need to balance the 2, and then in this instance, given the significance of the actual landmarks status, I think that for me tips it in the other way in regards to trying to require you to find another parking space to provide the 2 parking spaces. I think, and I agree with the Landmarks Commission that, well, the site development too, but to put 2 parking spaces in here, if you try to put a driveway, which I don't even think is wide enough on this side, it's just going to disrupt the historic character of the neighborhood, and that would not be appropriate. So I think the parking modification is supportable. Now, the setback modification, I understand the concerns of the letters that I've received regarding the look of it. And you submitted a number of photos that show the existing situation. And I don't know, I can't tell you if it's legal or not, but just the existing legal in terms of do they have permits to park there. There is a number of instances here where you see they are parked along in the driveway. Here's an unfinished one. Here's one here. Like I said, I'm not saying just because they're there that they are legal. It's just what's occurring in this area. And it's also occurring now on your particular site. You just kind of pull in, and it's a gravel area, and it's along the street. I think what you're providing in terms of pulling in and having some kind of screening actually would improve the view of it, although it is a private street. It's not a high-volume street. So, having this area is not that big of a deal. What I was asking Danny about the setback is that I understand you need a certain width here to make it functional. I don't know why you can't push this back here. I know there's an existing hedge, but to extend this screening to get the full of the car, or vice versa, I think you might qualify for the 3-foot setback to push it back this way so that there is more screening from the street. And so, because our zoning ordinance does allow parking in the front yard if it's screened, and this is, I know, front setback, but the same thing could apply that it's screened from view. So what I would like is that this be either the whole parking space be moved up 3 feet so more screening can occur and you still keep the minimum width here that transportation wanted, or this hedge needs to go so that you can extend this back and still get the one.
Yeah, we could add a couple feet. It was 14, and we have like 16, so we could pull the screening a couple feet this way.
Okay.
Which would give us 13 feet of screening.
Right. Okay.
And a car is typically like, 15, even a bigger car is 16, like a SUV. This hedge, the hedge here and the hedge here were from the 30s and
Yeah.
40s. They've been there on all
right
the
here.
pictures and everything. This is like a really beautiful grape. There's a big yucca here, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
big grapevine. So, and this kind of crawls up the tower.
Okay, yeah,
So
just so whatever you can
it would
do to
be
screen it
difficult.
from the
Yeah,
street.
it's original.
If we could move it forward, I think in the R4, if it's covered, then
5%.
it can be up to 3 feet.
Covered or uncovered
then-
parking, if it's 5% landscaping or something. I mean, we just did that
Right,
new.
but that's for multifamily residences. In this case, it does I just looked in the ordinance. It does qualify for the 3 foot, and that would be granted by the design board.
Okay.
Because of
It
the
was
less than
something we-
50 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
one we just added in 2008.
So
Correct.
if you move this up 3 feet, you added 2 feet of
That would give us
landscaping
about
there. That would
16,
yeah,
17
that would,
feet,
That would definitely
Screen
do
it.
it.
13, 16.
Okay. Then, so that covers those two. In regards to the interior setback modification, this part here is an existing situation. It's a garage. Now it's going to living space, habitable space. The structure is already there. So in terms of the changing of the use and the addition of the windows, that's something that's supportable. I do have concerns with new doors in the setback, and I understand that this is it's the only access to your equipment here. But if I were to support the modification, I would want to put a condition that if this area was ever remodeled so that it's incorporated into the house, that this door be removed. That I approve the door here because of its function, and that it's not a high volume thing. It's not going to cause a lot of impacts to the neighbor. There's no lighting, and I would put a condition on that no lighting be provided here. In terms of the addition, it is a uniform addition to the existing structure, and again, these first-story windows and with the screening and all that, that's not going to cause an impact to the neighbor where it's located. So I could support the building addition too. Just making a note. So with all that, I can support your project. I understand the concerns. It is pretty much an existing situation. The city doesn't typically reward illegal construction. This is an instance that happened years ago, and had they came in the 50s and asked for the conversion of it, the requirement still would have been the one uncovered parking space, which could have been provided uncovered or covered. So it could have been provided where it was now. So in effect, you're not changing what would have been back then, and that's actually something we're looking at in the future to possibly allow that with some other kind of approval. But I think in this instance, it is supportable. With the added conditions that I said regarding if this space was converted into habitable space, that this door be removed, that no exterior lighting be provided here, and then that the parking space out front be entirely screened. And I'll work on the language, but you know that what my intent is, that it be screened from Alcasaria so you can't see it from the street. So it actually would improve the existing situation, but where it's just pulled in, there will be some screening of it.
And that would be an 8-foot hedge, or what would typical per ordinance nowadays?
It would have to meet ordinance requirements.
Correct.
So
It can be up to 8 feet,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that tall.
Right.
Really, it only needs to be 5 or 6 feet to screen a car.
Okay.
yeah, because you wouldn't want it so tall that it impedes backing out. I know it's a low volume street, but I'm sure there's people walking and all that. So you don't want it so high. Transportation staff might get involved in terms of making sure the visibility to access is still okay. So I'll just tell you it has to be in conformance with our code, which visibility is one of the requirements of our code. So you okay with those? And you read the other conditions?
Yes.
that they're proposing to move the as-built storage shed and then
Yeah,
That-
we show that. It's
here,
not shown, but it's going to be relocated right here, and it won't be on a footing.
okay,
It'll just be on, like, wood,
It'll-
pressure-treated wood.
it'll meet the code requirements.
Correct.
Gonna have to.
Without electrical, so it doesn't require a permit.
Okay. And then the archaeological was pretty standard in this area. All right, so and then I do want to, the findings that are here, they're mixed together, the front setback, the interior setback, and the parking modification. So I'm going to separate them out, the three, to make it clear what the three findings are that I've made and my justification for them. I'm going to add language regarding that it's an existing landmark, that the existing garage, substandard size, that there's no lighting, and the parking will be screened. So I'm going to add a little more to the findings in regards to my reasoning on why it's supportable. So when you get the resolution, it isn't going to be in this paragraph form. You'll see it in a different form. And then also reflect the fact that the addition back here is a uniform improvement to an existing structure. So I will make this so with the revised findings and the revised conditions of approval, I can approve your project. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if that was to occur, Danny or Joanne, your original planner, will contact you.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Sure. So we'll move on to the next item, which is 435 East Valeria.
Yeah, I know. Hey, Danny.
I'm the homeowner, but I actually have a meeting at 10, so I'm gonna run, but he's going to represent me.
Okay, all right.
I was
great.
here, though.
All right, sure, yeah.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Michelle Bedard, Assistant Planner, Project Planner for this application. The project site is 435 East Valerio Street. It's in the Upper East neighborhood. It's a cornered lot on the corner of Valerio and Olive Streets. Turn over here to the site plan. Back to the photographs.
It's right here. Oh, this is the existing.
Yeah, we'll keep it on the existing for now. So again, the existing project site is 5,900 square feet lot size, corner lot, Valerio and Olive. The existing residence is a two-story single-family residence. It's non-conforming to the required setbacks on both front setbacks. So you can see the orange is the property line, the green is the building footprint, and the pink are the required setbacks. The pink is the 15-foot for the one-story and 20-foot setback for a two-story, an R2 zone. And the yellow is the open yard, which we'll get to that later. But I just wanted to point out the existing site development. As you'll see here, the project for the parcel has two covered spaces. One's provided in a single-car garage here, and there's a two-car garage that sits here that divides the property line, and it's shared between this property and the neighbor property at 1715 Olive Street. Sort of an unusual configuration, but what the proposal involves is to demolish the half of the two-car garage and the single-car garage and provide a new conforming two-car accessory building with a 400 square foot garage and 322 square feet of accessory space above. So if we turn to the proposed site plan, I also want to point out while we're here that part of the proposal will demolish some existing square footage of the original. This was a later addition that was done. So this building footprint is the original building footprint, and the proposal will demolish approximately 242 square feet of existing permitted habitable space and exterior stairs. And so the garage is going to be moved. Conforming garage will be moved from this non-conforming situation in the interior and rear setbacks to to a conforming location. This is just showing the demolition of the second floor plan, some interior alterations. So again, the orange is the property line, green is the building footprints, and the pink are the required setbacks. So this is the new 2-car garage and accessory building, and it's going to be 3 feet from the interior setback and 6 feet from the rear setback. And then there's that information that was the portion of the existing that's going to be demolished. So that history. The project involves 2 modifications, one for an open yard modification to allow alterations within the required open yard, and the second modification is setback modification to allow window and door alterations within the required front setback of the residence. Going back to the parking for just a moment, just wanted to explain the existing configuration. Although it's sort of unusual as the existing 2-car garage sits over the property line, staff believes that both of these parcels, known as 435 East Valerio and 1715 Olive Street, were at one time one parcel and were subdivided, and the subdivision was a legal subdivision that predated the subdivision process. So there's window and door alterations in this location, the front. And then go to the elevations. We can look through some of that. So this is the front entrance as you see it on Olive Street. It does have a 435. The address is East Valerio. This is the Valerio Street view. And then this is the rear property line, and that's the side that would be facing. Excuse me, wait a minute, did I get that backwards? No, this is the Valerio Street view, and this is the view that would be facing the new garage. So they're doing some window and door alterations in these locations, just to make some minor improvements to improve the aesthetics of the existing and return it back to sort of the original character of the development. These are the proposed elevations of the new 2-car garage and detached accessory structure, 2-car garage, accessory space above, and different elevations here. The setback modification also includes a new bay window on this new accessory building. The proposed bay window was added as part of the design review process to add some character to that elevation, this elevation here. And it currently doesn't meet the requirements to encroach. You're allowed a 2-foot encroachment, but it has to be a minimum of 3 feet above the finished floor, and it does not meet that. That's this line here is what that minimum 3 feet dimension would be. So because they're already asking for an open yard modification, we just included that in the modification request. And then I want to go back to the site plan proposed. Let me go back to the existing site plan. So the existing lot, again, 5,900 square feet on a corner, is non-conforming to the required lot size, and it's a constrained lot, and it's undersized and on a corner lot. So the existing configuration does not meet the minimum required open yards, specifically that it does not meet the minimum 20-foot dimensions. The proposed project reconfigures the open yard slightly, but results in less open yard space. The existing, what did we say? The existing about 12, or not quite 1,200. Oh no, the existing is closer to 1,700, and then the proposed is just under 1,200.
Yeah.
And
Could I make, I want to make a clarification on that.
When it's your turn, let her finish, then you can.
Great.
So the portion back here was primarily the existing open yard, and this dimension, it doesn't meet the dimensions because this dimension is less than 20 feet in width. The proposed open yard, let me see this. Yeah, we can see this one here as well. So this is a proposed plan. So a new driveway, new lawn area in this location, and then a new deck. So essentially this area will serve as the open yard. This doesn't meet the requirements because it's elevated. The existing residence is on a raised foundation, and is the deck is higher than the allowed elements for required open yard. But the area and this new proposed deck coming off the main open yard area, and given that the dimension is already less than 20 feet, staff is supportive of the open yard modification, specifically because they are the site improvements under the existing lot undersized, corner lot constraints, and the fact that they're providing, although the garage doesn't require modification, the relocation of the garage to a conforming location reduces the area that could possibly meet that 20-foot dimension. So let me just go through. So as I said before, the project requires two modifications, involves two modifications, one for the changes, doors and window changes within the front setback. Go back one more to the proposed site plan. And then the open yard modification in this location. Staff is supportive of the modifications. The project, transportation, just want to add, transportation reviewed the project and is supportive of the location of the garage and the new driveway elements. And the project also went to the single family design board twice. Board had positive comments on the project and was supportive of the project. So the staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve both modifications, making the findings outlined in the report. Do you have any other questions?
No, right now, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think so right now. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Yeah, sure. Dan Weber, I'm the architect. I'll make it really brief since Michelle did such a good job. The owner has a family, couple small children, and their goal is, this is a 100-year-old house, their goal is just to clean it up, and it's suffered from a lot of additions and modifications over the years. So our goal is just to keep the character of the existing house, clean it up, regularize the windows that are around the perimeter, and create. Right now, there's almost no usable outdoor space, so we're trying to create some deck space that relates to the floor level of the house, and a little bit open yard space where there is none now, and then fix the really weird parking situation over there. So I think I'll, unless you want some more information from me, I think I'll just leave it at that and answer any questions you have. My one clarification on the open yard is we actually, this boundary that we've hatched is actually 1,156 square feet. But there's portions of open yard, like this little section right here, where we could expand that boundary, and we could actually expand this up to the extent of the porch, and we could actually count a portion of this deck as usable open yard, and I think we could get it over the 1,250, maybe 1,300 or something. It'd still be a little less than what's there today, but much more usable open yard space.
Well, my thinking with the open yard is anything less than like 8 or 10 feet is really not usable. So the fact this is the setback 6 feet, this really that's not, people aren't going to be using this back here, it'd be more junk. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this, though, is an improvement with the deck.
Yeah.
Technically it doesn't count, but, this in and of itself, people aren't going to be running down here with a 6-foot deck. So I think...
Not at all. It's hard to perceive from this plan that the house meets grade at this line over. Mm-hmm. So this yard area is at the floor level of the house, and then it drops severely. So it goes from 0 down to -6 feet back here. So the deck is usable and this yard is usable because the house opens onto it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other question I have is regarding the functionality of the garage. You are requesting an open yard modification, and one of the things is the consistency with the zoning ordinance. We require a 20 by 20 garage space, and I understand it is 20 here, but the garage door's over here. So in effect, it is an 18-foot wide garage, because if a car's parked here, you're not going to come angle in. You can't get out. So this jog here looks more like storage to me. And then the other thing is the doors. Why do you need doors here when there's a garage door here? So I'd like to, my concern is it kind of looks like it's an extension of the living area up above. Here's the side elevation to the open yard. Here's the front to the street. So can you explain your ideas regarding the garage?
Yeah, we I mean, we wanted to have a normal, usable garage. That was the whole point of doing the garage. The garage, the way it is right now, is it's a shared driveway with the neighbor.
I was out at the
And
site.
you did. So you saw it dips severely, and it's very hard to maneuver. And so this is designed to be a real garage with 2 usable, normal functioning garage spaces. And we did have some conversation with the Single Family Design Board about the articulation of the massing there, and we studied a bunch of solutions with them and arrived at this because it did a few things. It broke the mass there with this form that steps back a little bit, and it steps the mass down as we approach the 1-story garage at the neighbor. And I think that it would be nice. I would love if we could have centered those garage doors on the garage to make that, as functional as possible. But
I mean,
it
this
wasn't
reads as a garage, and this reads as a storage area. I mean, it doesn't read as part of the
when
garage.
you pull a car into this bay, you'll have to edge to the right side of that bay so that when you're inside and you open the door, your door opens into the space that's inside of that section. And we wanted that to read as a separate form, and it was designed to read as a separate form. But inside, that is a necessary and an integral portion of the 20-foot by 20-foot garage
Oh, I know.
area.
So I'm wondering why not square it off and center the door so it's more functional.
Because we couldn't. It's the first floor has to conform to a 3-foot setback, and the second floor has to conform to a 6-foot setback. So we couldn't center the garage doors and still keep a simple, characteristic craftsman-style building form.
Okay, what's this?
Why are there doors on the side? Well, there's a normal door, which is like after you park and you close the garage
Right,
door, that's
2 of
where you
those.
walk out, and the other door is where you go up the stair to the
Accessory space.
office space above.
Well, why do you need 2 separate doors, though, if it's the same people going in? If they're living there, why do you need the 2 doors to go to the... Okay, this is all, you can go,
Because we-
park and go here.
Well, we just have a very tight garage space. So if there's 2 cars parked in there and you're trying to use that space, you have to walk in here and kind of shimmy down next to the car before you go upstairs.
No, I mean, take out this one, just leave this one here.
Oh, I mean, I guess it's possible. It's probably 2 reasons. One for the symmetry of the design, and another for convenience, because if you park here and you've got your groceries, you probably come straight across.
Okay, and then what about this big door?
If somebody's using the garage you're working on your car or fixing your bike or something, it's a place to open up the garage doors and have some natural air and natural light and circulation. And people do things they're not supposed to do in their garage all the time, like you store your lawnmower in there or your tools or your bicycles or surfboards, and that makes the garage a usable portion of the yard, an extension of the yard and a connection to the house. And it provides some character on what would otherwise be a big blank wall that faces your only usable outdoor yard space.
All right. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 435 East Valerio Street? I don't see no one. Have we received any letters or emails?
No.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and walked around the neighborhood and looked in the open yard area. In regards to the front setback modifications, for the new windows and door alterations, I think they're supportable. It's an improvement to the property. It's something to be supported. In regards to the open yard modification, like I said, there's 2 components of the modification. Yours is munched together too. Okay, it says the modifications are consistent with the purpose and intent in the zoning ordinance and are necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. Okay, I believe that you are improving the open yard area, but I have concerns with the proposed improvement. The way it's designed to me looks more like it's an extension of the accessory space, like I said. I get concerned with I understand your ideas, but there's probably other solutions to it. I understand the idea of jogging this in, but then in effect, this makes this not usable. In my opinion, it's not part of the garage, so it needs to conform with the 6-foot setback in this way. A way to alleviate that would be to make it accessible to the garage. You know, it could jog in here, that's fine because your 20-foot distance is here, but I think the door does need to be moved over, and if it means moving the second story, cutting it on the other side to make it more symmetrical, that's something that is. But I don't, you're doing a whole new garage. It's an 18-foot wide garage. And like you said, it's cramped. You have 2 cars parked in here. You can't really walk down here because they're cramped in here because they're limited to this area. If you're doing a new building, it needs to be more open. And so that would be, if I was to approve the open yard modification, I would be requiring that the garage door be more centered so that the full 20 width is accessible to the car. In regards to this elevation, I understand your desire in terms of looks. There's other ways with screening and landscaping to make it not look so much like a blank wall, and to make this be more like a garage. I would condition that these doors be removed, replaced with walls, and that only one man door be provided in that area. It's just, to me, it just looked, if it's going to be functioning like a garage, it's going to be built like a garage, it needs to be designed like a garage. And I don't know if you want to make any comments regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we studied this garage looking, not having this mass change, and the way to achieve that is that you move the whole garage over 3 feet, and which we did study. But the purpose of this thing, of this whole project, was to try to get some more usable, functional space, both parking space and yard space. And so our thought was that by moving it over 3 feet, this distance between the garage and the house just became so small and tight and not usable. Wasn't worthwhile for us to do.
What is
so
this? You want to measure it? Tell me what the difference would be. What did I give you the right one?
Yeah. So
1/4.
So we're at, from the house to the garage face right now is 19 feet. So we move it over at 16 feet, which only leaves a little band of yard once we have a entry porch element here. So we wanted to keep it pushed as far that way and as far back as we can, because really we've proposed a planted lawn here. We're trying to get some yard space that functions as a usable yard. So we didn't think it was worthwhile to do this new garage if we were going to have to push it so far over that we weren't left with anything usable. I think in that case the owners would say, well, let's just keep the existing garage because it's even further over. And at least then we'll be left with some yard, even if the garage doesn't function very well and they have to park on the street, which is what they do right now because the garage is too hard to use. And we tried, we took a look at keeping the second floor pushed over to this 3-foot setback, but we found that wasn't supportable at all. Mm-mm. And we studied versions where the garage doors were not centered with the second floor. And the SFDB really didn't like that. They encouraged us very strongly to have a symmetrical, traditional garage door design. And it's a tough bunch of constraints to balance there. We studied 10, 15 options of this, and we felt this was the best design that kept a traditional symmetrical garage form, still allowed the conforming 20-foot by 20-foot use, 20-foot by 20-foot square inside the garage, and satisfied the SFDB and kept some yard space and complied to all of the setbacks for this. I think I would disagree with you that this is not part of the garage. I think this is absolutely part of the garage. I think if it weren't articulated like it was on the outside, that you probably wouldn't have that opinion because it would look like every other garage that you've seen.
No, I think the fact that I looked at it this way, and then I looked at the elevations.
I think if this were, if this garage were just a simple 20-foot by 20-foot square, and it didn't have this jog here, would the garage still be usable with the door slightly off center? I think so. Once you're in a garage, you can maneuver a car over to be centered slightly so that you can have two cars that are still usable and you can still open the doors. There's a lot of garages out there on house projects and remodels I do that are only 18 feet wide inside.
And they're old and existing in that
And
way.
they're old and they're old and
rebuilding them.
existing. And ours is new and wider and will be functional and it's conforming. I think the only difference is that the door is slightly off center, but it's wider than a normal garage door. A typical garage door is only 16 feet, sometimes 15 feet, and our overall width is wider.
How wide is it? I thought it was just 16 feet.
Our
Did I scale it wrong?
overall is 16 feet. No, you're right. So I think it's going to function fine, and I think you do need this space as part of the garage if you want to be able to park 2 cars there.
Well, that's what I mean, is square it off and move the garage so you can actually get to it. I don't.
I think it's just easier said than done when we have to go work with the SFDB and we have to conform to a 3-foot setback on the first floor and a 6-foot setback on the second floor. We'll certainly study other options for how to articulate that garage as we go forward.
And what was transportation comments on it, Michelle?
Transportation was supportive of the configuration. They did make some suggestions to alter the configuration, but they said they were just suggestions. And since they had commented, the new garage design functions as proposed due to the extra width and maneuvering room on one side of the garage. It could be improved with regard to maneuverability if the driveway were slightly more centered, the door centered, and or the first 4-foot jog in the front of the garage were removed. However, it may remain as proposed, and these are just suggestions.
So they had the same concerns that I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not a perfect garage. I wish it could be. I wish we could. And we could remove this jog, and the SFDB would probably
Well,
kick us
removing
back.
the jog in of itself is not going to help. It's the garage door location
which-
because it makes it hard to get over there.
I understand that, but you'd have to remove the jog if you wanted to center the garage door, right? You could no longer do this garage. So you'd have to flatten this face of the structure, and you couldn't articulate this as a broken, separate form to step down to this neighboring garage.
Could you do like a foot over, just to kind of make a little more room?
You could, but again, then the garage door wouldn't be centered with the second floor mass and the gable above.
Window, right? Okay.
Right. So you would have to flatten this face so that you could move the garage door, and it would then be centered on the first floor, and it would just be a non-traditional. It would look like a poorly designed garage next to a already kind of suffering main house. And we really are trying to be traditional and austere and keep the design as simple and true to the style as we can. It's even with the improvements we're making, it's got some things that we wish we could do that are outside of the scope of the project, but it's the best. We're giving it our best.
Okay. So what if instead of requiring it to be over, I know you've told me over and over again that you've already studied it, but to study again, seeing if there's some way you can move it over a little. And the answer, maybe you studied it and it doesn't work. You've discussed with the design board, and that's fine. But these doors, just one-man door over here.
And I think it's another thing that I don't want to get caught in a tailspin with a garage that my understanding is that this was totally conforming to all the ordinances. It's got support of the design review committee. It's got support of the transportation staff.
Okay, what I'll explain my findings to you. It's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and are necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. So I get concerned with the design the way it is now, that it looks like it's an extension of the living area above. With this doors, this is not typically of a garage. And so for me to support the open yard modification, I don't think this is appropriate improvement with all these doors and residential character on the garage. So I can't waver on this. I could, change it to supporting this kind of thing, but I can't support it on that. So, if I were to approve it, that would be the conditions. Your option would be to appeal it to the planning commission and just say you really need those doors and leave it up to them to decide.
Yeah, I don't think we would do that. I think if we got, the property owners are stretching themselves to do this garage. So their opinion is, if this becomes too much of an issue, we'll axe it from the project.
Right,
We'll
yeah.
keep the existing thing, as it is, the condition as it is right now. I think they would definitely be willing to compromise on these garage doors, and we'll just have to work with this design board to come up with an acceptable way to articulate that facade.
Okay.
Got to be a fine condition. I would ask that we could keep these two doors though, just for usability of this stair, to make it accessible and convenient to go up and down. The owners imagine that they might have their home office up there, and to me, it's just a matter of access and convenience and usability to have a door here where you don't have to go and scoot by your car and shimmy down the side in order to get
But you
there.
had just told me you had adequate room in there with it.
Well, yeah, it's usable, but you know what it's like when you've got two cars, an SUV and in a van. Yeah, it's minimal. It's not convenient for day-to-day use of running in and out.
Okay.
So, and I want this to be usable to park two cars in. So that's something like that is going to help them keep that functionality.
Okay, so I'll put a maximum of 2 man doors.
Great.
All right, so in regarding the findings that staff's proposing, I think I don't need to make any changes to that there. I'm just rereading it real quick. That it reflects what my thought process was in that. So, and you read the condition that was proposed already in the staff report that talks about repair, maintenance of the non-conforming hedges.
Well,
This for the
It says, said approval is subject to a condition that if at any time the repair of any non-conforming fence wall should exceed a maximum 10% allowance, that the location and height of the new replaced construction will comply with our fence ordinance.
yeah, we're comfortable with that.
Okay, so with that condition, with the two conditions, one's just studying moving the garage door over towards the, what property line is this?
North.
North property line. Okay, towards the north property line, and then remove the large proposed door and allow a maximum of 2 man doors on the, so you're calling this your south elevation of the garage?
Yeah, this is what we usually think of as north in Santa Barbara is
Okay.
this side, and this is the side that we usually think of as south towards
Okay,
the
so
beach.
it's not, it's just scale north versus.
Yeah, this is true north.
Okay.
So we actually, Project North,
Right.
probably most people think of it as over there. We
Okay,
just put
so-
this
so-
side up on the page.
So the south elevation.
Yeah, I would call
Right.
that the south elevation. It's actually technically southeast facing.
Well, close enough. Okay, so with those added conditions, I can approve your project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt that warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. And if either of those were to occur, Michelle would contact you.
Great. Can I clarify, your approval includes studying this just as part of the design review process as we go forward? You mean?
Yeah, and this is what you're proposing, but the notice says, it's an open yard modification to allow alterations to occur within the existing non-conforming open yard area. So even if it was meaning moving this over a little, that would still be, Michelle could find that a substantial conformance. So if it was even to move it over a little bit to help with it, so that the second story could be moved over a little bit, because I realize you have the constraint of the interior setback. So even moving it over, I would think that I would find that could be in substantial conformance with what I have approved today.
Okay. So, and if we study it and we find that this is working with the SFDB, this is the best solution.
Yeah,
That's
just work with
acceptable.
Michelle, and she'll just document
Okay,
it
great.
in the case.
And our bay window is part of your approval.
Yes.
Of the above. Okay, great.
All right. So now we'll move to the last item, which is 150 Loma Media Drive. Good morning. Good. Thanks for being patient.
Okay, good.
Anytime you're ready.
All right. Good morning. I'm David Eng, planning technician. The project before you is 150 Loma Media Road. This project's located on an 11,657 square foot lot, zoned E1. This is a hillside lot in the Riviera, and it's Loma Media you have here. It winds around this property along with some adjacent properties, and it comes back around here, so therefore it has 2 front yards. The property is currently developed with a 1-story, 1,139 square foot single-family home. It has an attached 260 square foot carport and a 47 square foot utility shed at the rear along this retaining wall. The project is for 155 square feet of new square footage. This will be the enclosure of this currently covered entryway and this breezeway area and currently laundry area. It includes a new 407 square foot 2-car garage. It'll include a new porch cover at the front in the front yard, new decks and landings. It'll include new replacement and some new windows and glass doors along at the exterior of the property. There is also a retaining wall that currently exists, and it runs through this property, and part of it also continues on to the adjacent property at 140 Loma Media. This wall is currently failing, and the properties are working together to replace this wall and also erect a fence that will exceed the allowed height in the setback. However, the applicant is asking for an administrative exception for that combined wall and fence to exceed the allowed height. The modification being requested is for a new window and a new sliding glass door located within the interior setback, which is 10 feet. Here you see the locations of these, the window and the glass door is highlighted.
Is it this one or is it this one here?
Oh, so there are also replacements, window replacements here and here. Mm-hmm. These replacements will not change the size of the exterior of the existing opening, so a modification is not required for those changeouts.
So this is this window here.
Correct.
And so it's just going to be changed as is?
It's actually getting reduced.
Reduced size,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Yeah,
getting clear
okay.
storage.
All right.
Okay, and so we have the existing and proposed elevations. The location of the sliding glass door will be on the south elevation, and this portion here highlighted in yellow is the encroachment into the interior setback. On the north elevation, the new clear-story window at the northeast corner of it's a master, or it's a bedroom. About roughly 2/3 of that new window will encroach into the interior setback. This window faces a retaining wall. This sliding glass door at the front is oriented to their front yard and doesn't really face the adjacent neighbor. Staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the modification with the finding that the window and glass door encroachments won't adversely affect the adjacent neighbors.
Okay. I don't think I have any questions right now. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Chris Cottrell, architect.
Is it on? Push it again. There you go.
Chris Cottrell, architect. Thank you, David. I think this is a very straightforward modification request. This project, actually, we went in with a bigger project and scaled it way back and worked extremely closely with the neighbor at 140 Loma Media. I think was a good example of neighborly communications. We had multiple meetings, multiple emails, and they are this retaining wall is now, we've got an agreement with both neighbors about how it's going to work out, and everyone's happy, which is fantastic. That's the goal. So this little, if I could just flip this. They worked very closely to make sure that both neighbors had privacy and retained views. So, like I said, everyone's happy with this configuration. There's the wall David was talking about with the extra fence. So, and in this case, for this one, we are reducing the existing window opening to be just a clear story, so they're getting views over the neighbor, not looking down in their motor court. So, unless you have any questions, it's pretty straightforward, Sean, on my end.
Yeah. No, I don't have any questions. I did go out to the site and looked at the proposal, and I agree with you that it is pretty straightforward. Like you heard me say, since you were sitting here, a little meeting with the first one, the doors and the interior setback I usually have concerns with. But in your instance, it is technically in the interior setback that's oriented towards the street. It's going to have no impacts to your neighbor, either lighting or privacy type issues. And you're actually, like you said, increasing the privacy between the two by changing this window, or changing this one to clear story, and the one you're adding is also clear story. So unfortunately you weren't on first. You had to sit through everyone else. But it's a supportable project. I do want to add to the finding, though, the fact that, just like I said, the new sliding glass door is oriented towards the front yard, not the adjacent neighbor. You know, that although it's in the front interior setback, it's not going to cause an impact, just to make it really clear of the reasoning in that. So the staff's not proposing any conditions, and I don't believe I need to add any conditions, so I can make the finding as I just revised it and approve your project. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have all oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those were to occur, David would contact you.
Fantastic.
Okay?
Great. Thank you.
And I adjourn the meeting.
Well done.
Singing of the sparrow in the sky, the perking of the coffee.